Gonzaga not only needs to take down Washington State tonight, they need a blowout win so that superstar Graham Ike can get some dang rest.
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Welcome into the Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster, Andy Patton, here to bring you news and updates on all things Zag athletics. Today's episode is brought to you by Mazda, folks. Putting in the work, that is what defined you. Stay tuned for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. Well, Gonzaga dropped out of the top 10 of the AP poll. Not a surprise there. They are still a top 10 team in the net, though. We're going to discuss that and get ready for Tuesday night's battle in Spokane against the Washington State Cougars. We'll talk about that game here, talk about what Gonzaga needs to do to ensure a victory over their future Pac-12 foes. We'll start there. Gonzaga taking on Washington State Tuesday, February 10th, 8 p.m. Pacific time on ESPN2. So a nationally broadcast game. And folks, if you are somebody who doesn't like these late tips, I got some not so good news for you. 6 remaining games in conference play for Gonzaga, including this Washington State game. 4 of those 6 games will tip off at 7:30 p.m. or later. There's 2 8 p.m. tips. It's this Gonzaga game and their game at the Chase Center against San Francisco, or this Washington State game, San Francisco game. Then they play St. Mary's and Santa Clara at 7:30. And then the other 2 games, I believe it's Portland and Pacific. Those will be 6 p.m. tips, all Pacific time, of course. So lots of late games. Those of you out on the East Coast, it's going to be some late nights if you're going to stay up and watch the end of this season for Gonzaga basketball. Gonzaga 3-0 against Washington State since WSU joined the WCC as an affiliate member. That, of course, happened before last season. 2-year stay in the West Coast Conference for both Washington State and Oregon State before the two of them, as well as Gonzaga, leave to go join the new look Pac-12 starting July 1st, 2026. Gonzaga swept Washington State last year and beat them back on January 15th of this year in Pullman. 86-65 was the final score, a 21-point victory, thanks in large part to Graham Ike. 23 points, 11 rebounds in that game. He was very, very efficient. I think it was 11 of 15 shooting. He played 36 minutes, and that was the game where he was still on the floor in the final 90 seconds or so of that game. Gonzaga up by, at that time, 19-20, something like that. Ike ended up tweaking his ankle at the very end of that game. Missed the next 3 games for Gonzaga before returning triumphantly in that game against St. Mary's 2 weeks ago. So the main storyline for this game will be continuing to keep Graham Ike healthy. That performance against Wazoo on January 15th was the first game without Braden Huff, so Gonzaga hadn't really debuted the small ball lineup yet. They relied pretty heavily on Graham Ike in that game. That's what we've seen them do subsequently since he has returned, and we'll talk kind of more about what we think that might look like in this game on Tuesday night. But I want to kind of re-meet this Washington State team. Obviously, we saw them about 3 weeks ago, so there's in some ways not a ton of things that have changed, although there are some things that have changed and will make a significant impact in this game. Right now, Washington State 11-15 overall, 6-7 in the WCC. They're 3-4 in the 7 games they have played since that loss against Gonzaga. The loss to Gonzaga was the second of what ended up being a 4-game losing streak. They went on the road and lost at San Francisco and at San Diego, which was a rough loss for Coach Riley and the Cougars. They then rattled off 3 straight wins, all of them at home. They beat Pepperdine, which, sure, you're expected to do that. They beat Seattle U. And then they beat Portland by 30. That was Portland's last game before turning around and beating Gonzaga at the Chiles Center. College basketball is weird, and sometimes you get results like that where you get boat raced by 30 and then beat the highest-ranked team you've ever beat. It's just one of the things that happens in this weird, goofy sport that we all love. After that, Washington State went to Corvallis and lost to Oregon State by 10, and then came back home to Pullman and nearly took down Santa Clara, the first place team in the WCC. Wazoo ended up losing this game, but it was only by 4, 96-92. Again, never want to give up 96 points at home, but the fact that Wazoo was able to score 92 on the Broncos is kind of a testament to what this team is able to do offensively, and KenPom certainly agrees. 126th in the country as I'm recording this on Monday evening. Preseason had them 137th, so they're right around where they were expected to be at this point. However, they are much better offensively than defensively. 79th in adjusted offensive efficiency, meanwhile, just 239th in adjusted defensive efficiency. So again, it's how Gonzaga scored 86 on them on the road. Just not a very good defensive team. They played a decent tempo, 179th, so a little bit below the kind of median in college basketball. This will end up being a quad 3 home game for Gonzaga. Washington State is 133rd at the net right now, but I'm a little surprised that this resume nets you 133rd in the net, because they're 0-3 in quad 1 games, which fine, outside the top 100, you wouldn't expect many quad 1 wins. They're 0-9. 0-9 in quad 2 games. On one hand, playing 12 quad 1, quad 2 games is a testament to the schedule that this team has put together, but they haven't won a single one of them. 0-12 between quad 1 and quad 2. And you're thinking, well, they're probably 133rd because they haven't lost any other games. That's not true either. 5-2 in quad 3 games and 5-1 in quad 4 games. So they have a quad 4 loss, 2 quad 3 losses, and 0 quad 1 or quad 2 wins. And again, it's not like 133rd is like super good at the net either, but like that resume right there wouldn't be one I would expect to see in the top 150 or maybe even top 175. Obviously, the net factors in more than just exactly. Not all quad 1 games are created equal. Not all quad 2 games are created equal. Close games against good teams will help and blah, blah, blah. But still a little bit surprising to see that when looking at Washington State's net record at this point here again on Monday, February 9th. KenPom projecting this to be a 20-point win for Gonzaga, 88-68. But the big storyline for Wazoo that's different from the last time these two teams met, Rihards Vavers, he's 6'7", small forward from Latvia. He did not play in this game last time between these two teams. He was dealing with an injury. I think he missed like 2 or 3. I think he missed 3 games total. But he is Wazoo's second leading scorer and a very critical player for them to have back in the mix. He has also been flaming hot since returning from his injury. He returned the next game for Washington State after this game against Gonzaga back on the 15th of January. He's played in all 6. So he missed one other game. Then he came back. He's played in 6 of Wazoo's 7 games since then. And in those 6 games, he is averaging over 16 points per game, over 5 boards, 1.2 steals, 1 assist in about 29 minutes per game. And he is red hot. He's taken 10 2-pointers in that time. He's made 9 of them. So it's shooting 90% on 2s. Again, 10 2s in 6 games is pretty clear evidence that he's not on the floor to take 2-point shots. He is on the floor to shoot from the perimeter. And shoot and score from the perimeter, that is what he does. He is 20 for 40 in those 6 games since returning from injury. 50% from 3 on nearly 7 attempts per game in that 6-game heater that he has been on for this Washington State team. And it's not like that's way off from where he was before. On the season, this 6-game stretch has certainly boosted his numbers, but he's still shooting 41% on the year with an average of 6 3-point attempts per game. This dude is a lights out 3-point shooter. Again, averaging 11 points on the year, averaging 41% from 3, second leading scorer behind freshman Ace Glass. Vavers is a big player for Wazoo to have back in this game. And again, we'll get into the keys to victory in the second segment here, but I'm going to tell you right now, Gonzaga is going to have to contain him and contain this Wazoo team from the perimeter if they want to make sure they don't take another loss here in the middle of conference play. Some other names to note, just to familiarize yourself for those who maybe don't remember. Ace Glass, true freshman for Washington State, averaging 16.5 points, about 3 boards and 2.5 assists per game. Also a long-range shooter, 39% from 3 on over 6 attempts per game. Struggled against Gonzaga last time out, 16 points on 5 of 13 shooting, but he's had some really strong performances since then, including 29 points at San Diego and 20 points, 4 boards, 3 assists, and 2 steals against Santa Clara. Ndie Okafor is the true size for Wazoo. I think he's 6'11" or 7 feet, one of the bigger guys and just kind of bulkier guys in the entire conference, averaging about 11 points, 6 boards, 1.5 blocks per game. But he did nothing against Gonzaga last time out. He actually fouled out in just 11 minutes of playing time. That was a big thing that Graham Ike did successfully in that game. He had 0 points. He had more turnovers than rebounds, but he's scored 13 or more points in every game he has played since that Gonzaga game. So he has been a focal point for them offensively. Pretty likely going to play better than he did last time out. Emili Yalaho is another player to keep an eye on. He is the Texas Tech transfer. He did not play great against the Zags last time either, 5 points on 1 of 6 shooting, but he's averaging 10.5 points, a little under 6 rebounds and 1.5 assists per game. Also shooting 43% from 3, also coming off a 21.8 of 13 shooting performance against the Broncos of Santa Clara. Well, we already teased it, but folks, 3-point defense going to be monumentally important for Gonzaga because it has been abysmal as of late, and Wazoo can absolutely make you pay from beyond the arc. We'll talk about that, some other keys to a Zag victory coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, this is Mazda's moving the game forward. For those who know there's more to the score than what's on the screen. How about Graham Ike? He threw Gonzaga on his back and led them to that win over Oregon State, played 39 minutes, scored 35 points, both career highs, 13 made field goals, literally led them to a victory after that loss. You knew Graham was not going to accept losing twice in a row, and he made sure that did not happen. He also played excellent defense. After the game, he gave all of the credit to his teammates and coaching staff, which is just the kind of thing you expect from this senior, from this leader for this Gonzaga team. And these are the moments that remind us what it really takes to raise the bar. It's that extra work that goes in off the court. It's dialing in every detail. It's giving it that extra fire. Graham sure does that. He's also got that grit and never quit attitude. And Mazda puts that same passion into every model. Highlight plays make the headlines on social media, but what it took to get there, that's what makes it count. And there's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. Folks, spring cleaning is around the corner. It's the perfect time to reset your routine and refresh your space. If you're spending more time at home, you might as well love how it looks and feels. And that's why you should turn to Wayfair. It's a one-stop shop for getting your home back on track. From bedding and mattresses to storage solutions for every room, Wayfair makes it easy to start fresh. Wayfair has everything you need for a full home refresh all in one place. Whether you're updating your living room, organizing your space, or upgrading your work from home setup, Wayfair's huge selection makes it easy to find exactly what works for your style and for your budget. We're redoing some spaces in our house. Some of you can see on YouTube behind me that that's happening in here. And we're going to use Wayfair. It will be utilized to make sure that everything fits our style. Shopping is easy. The delivery is smooth. Everything arrives exactly as expected. So get organized, refreshed, and back on track this year for way less. Head to wayfair.com to shop all things home. That's wayfair.com. Wayfair. Every style, every home. All right, folks, segment 2, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast, still part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcasting network. And we're still getting ready for Tuesday night's battle between Gonzaga and Washington State, the final regular season matchup between these two teams in the West Coast Conference. Of course, they will both be playing each other regularly from here on out as members of the Pac-12. We talked about this Wazoo team, what they've been up to since Gonzaga beat them in Pullman back on January 15th. And now we're going to take a look at what Gonzaga needs to do on Tuesday night to ensure they get that 4-0 record against Wazoo in conference play, to ensure they don't take their second loss in 3 games, and to ensure that they continue to keep on rolling this year towards a WCC championship. Key number 1 for Gonzaga, it's an obvious one. They got to improve defensively on the perimeter. It has been a big source of strain for Gonzaga these last couple of weeks, and it is a huge strength of Washington State's. Wazoo currently shoots 37.3% from 3 as a team. That is 30th best mark in college basketball, quite literally a top 30 three-point shooting team in the country. They take about 25.7 threes per game, make on average 9.6 per game. That's 58th most makes per game in the year on 109th most shot attempts. They take a lot of threes. They make a lot of threes. They make them at a really high clip. That was evident last time when Gonzaga beat them. Yes, it was a 21-point win for Gonzaga, but the one thing they did not do well is they did not defend the perimeter well. Wazoo missed 15 threes in that game, but they also made 13. They took 28 of them, 13 for 28. That's about 46.5%. It's not good enough. Not good enough defensively for Gonzaga in that game, and it's been a consistent problem. Gonzaga has allowed 3 of the last 4 teams they have played to shoot over 43% from 3. San Francisco shot 50%, 14 of 28, nearly. Had they made that 15th three, they would have upset the Zags in Spokane. Portland shot 43.8%, 7 of 16. They did most of their damage just breaking down the defense on the pick and roll, but still made nearly 44% of their threes. And then Oregon State on Saturday, 10 of 18, 55%. Gonzaga has not done well defending the perimeter really all season long, but in particular, these last couple of weeks, it has been very, very bad. Meanwhile, Washington State has 2 players who are knockdown, high volume 3-point shooters. We talked about them already, Ace Glass and Rihards Vavers. Glass is shooting 39% on 6.2 attempts per game. Vavers is shooting 41% on 6 attempts per game. They also have Yalaho shooting 43% on about 4 attempts per game. Simon Hildebrandt, who had a career night against Gonzaga last time these two teams played, he's shooting 37% on 2.5 attempts per game. Parker Garrett's off the bench, shooting 38% on 1.5 attempts per game. This team can light it up from deep. You need the Zags perimeter defense to be better. They have great on-ball defenders. Jalen Worley's great. Tyon Grant-Foster's great. Emmanuel Nachente is great, but the rotations are lacking. There's a step slow coming off those screens. We've seen a few guys really struggle with pinching in and leaving their man. Davis Fogel has struggled with that. Mario and Braden Smith have struggled with that. This is not a game where you can afford to leave guys open from 3. It could bury the Zags in this one. Key number 2 for Gonzaga, get out to an early lead at home. Just put this game away early. It's been a while since Gonzaga has done that. Sure, they're coming off a 20-point win over Oregon State on the road. A 20-point road win is never a bad thing, but they didn't put this thing away until well into the second half. Like, it was a 1 to 2 possession game for pretty much the majority of this game before Gonzaga finally went on a run at around the 12-minute mark in the second half, ended up winning by 20. They obviously did not beat University of Portland. They struggled against San Francisco. Like, they struggled against Seattle U. They ended up putting Pepperdine away, but like, they have not just buried a team in a while. And part of the problem with that, not only from a metrics perspective and just an anxiety perspective for the fans, is that it's not allowed Graham Ike to get a break. Graham Ike has played over 35 minutes in every game he has played since Braden Huff went down with his injury. Some of this, I think, is a coaching decision that I don't necessarily agree with, but some of this is the simple fact Graham Ike is the best player on this team, and Gonzaga hasn't been able to win a basketball game without their best player on the floor. They need him out there. They didn't feel they could beat Oregon State without Graham Ike on the floor, and they probably could have subbed out in the last few minutes of that game. But again, that's where it's like, oh, maybe they should have chose to do that. But again, they wanted that 20-point win for the metrics perspective. In this game, put 10 on Oregon, put 10 on Wazoo before the first media timeout. Be up 12-2, be up 15-4. Like, have a big dominant lead and just do not let off the gas. Just bury this team so that Graham Ike does not have to play the last 8 minutes of this basketball game. And if he still does, if Mark Few's still playing him when Gonzaga's up 15, 18, 20 points, then we're going to have some words and some thoughts about why that's maybe not the right idea with Braden Huff, quote, not even close to returning for Gonzaga at this point. But right now, the main issue is that Gonzaga has not given Mark Few much of a choice regarding Graham Ike's minutes. Bury this team in the first half, come out firing at the start of the second half, and allow Graham to sit for the last 10 minutes so he's as fresh as possible for that game on the road against Santa Clara on Saturday. Key number 3, which will go hand in hand with key number 2, force turnovers and get out in transition. Wazoo turns the ball over a bunch. 17 turnovers last time these two teams played. Gonzaga had just 8 in that game, and that was at home for Wazoo. The Cougs average about 13 turnovers per game, 306th in college basketball. They're using KenPom's rate stats, which I think are a little bit more accurate in terms of, because they're not factoring in possessions and teams that play faster and blah, blah, blah. Washington State, 18.5% turnover rate on the year. That's 274th. So it's a little bit better, but still, they turn the ball over a lot. Meanwhile, Gonzaga forces turnovers 20.5% of the time, which is 22nd best. Gonzaga is a top 25 team in the country in terms of forcing turnovers. Wazoo is 275th, so a bottom 90 team in the country in terms of taking care of the basketball. Win this battle. Force a bunch of turnovers. Live ball turnovers, even better. Get out, score easy points in transition. Get it steal, get a couple of dribbles, have Davis Fogel throw out a dunk. Like those kind of points. It's at home. It's going to be a good crowd for a late tip on ESPN against a regional rival. Get that crowd going. Get the energy there. Force David Riley to take early timeouts because you're scoring in transition, and his team cannot stop you when you're out on a 3-on-1 fast break. That's what I want to see from Gonzaga in this game. Key number 4. It's been a key for so many of their games recently. Get the shooters back on track. The shooters, specifically to me, is Adam Miller and Steele Venters. Again, Mario Saint-Superi is the best three-point shooter on this team by percentage, but he is, I don't count him as a shooter because that's not his specific role on the team. He just happens to also be good as a three-point shooter. Same with Emmanuel Nicente for that matter. Adam Miller and Steele Venters are on this roster to shoot threes, and they're not doing a very good job of it as of late. However, Miller was very good the last time these two teams played in Pullman 3 weeks ago. He had 13 points and 5 rebounds. Venters, not so much. He only had 3 points in that game. He only played 14 minutes because he was in foul trouble, which has been a major issue for Steele throughout the season. Both have struggled since the loss of Braden Huff. We've litigated that conversation quite a few times on the show. Effectively, Gonzaga's three-point shooters are best when you play the game inside out. You're not playing the game inside out with just Ike on the floor, and so they haven't been able to get into a rhythm as consistently. Meanwhile, Wazoo, though, this is not their strength. They allow opponents to shoot about 36% from three. It's 292nd in the country, according to KenPom. The Zags shot it well from three last time out, 6 of 16. Not a super high volume, but that's never been Gonzaga's MO, and I don't think it should be in this game either. But you want to be efficient. 38% from the Zags last time out. I'll take that in this game. Would love to see Steele get going against a former, Eastern Washington assistant coach, somebody he's familiar with. He's back at home in Spokane. Would love to see Miller get back on track. He's been a little absent the last few games. I think that'd be a big thing to see from Gonzaga in this game, especially leading into that game against Santa Clara. And then key number 5, this is pretty much directed right at Mark Few. Either use the small ball lineup or play Diani for good chunks in this game. Graham cannot play 35 minutes. We already talked about that a little bit earlier, so I won't spend a ton of time on it here, but you got to be willing to, and which is it? Is the plan that Diani is playing all of the non-Graham Ike minutes? Because that's what it's been so far since Graham Ike returned from his injury. I understand the small ball lineup was an act of desperation with both Ike and Huff out, but there was a lot of things about that lineup that I liked. And Wazoo, Ndie Okafor is big, and when Ndie Okafor is on the floor, you probably don't want to run the small ball lineup. But guess what? There was 29 minutes out of 40 the last time these two teams played that Ndie Okafor was not on the floor because he only played 11 minutes. Not saying that'll happen again, but Okafor is not going to play 40 minutes either. So when he's on the bench and when you need perimeter defense, when you need to lock down this team that has a lot of floor spacing and shooters, and when you're playing a team that's top 80 in the country offensively and like 250th defensively, that's probably the right lineup to use. Play the small ball lineup, lock them down defensively. Sure, your offense may stumble a little bit, but you're playing a team that's pretty darn bad on that end of the floor. I think you're going to figure it out. Or play Diani 10 minutes and see what he can do. 12 minutes even. Give Graham a little bit of a break. I just want to know what the plan is beyond Graham Ike playing 40 minutes, because if that's plan A and there's not a plan B or plan C, there's going to be some problems coming up this season. Well, folks, Gonzaga was the biggest faller in the AP poll after their disastrous loss to Portland last week, but they're still in a pretty decent spot with big games still to come. We're going to talk more about that coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert start to finish without all the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. And they handle everything from W-2s to self-employment forms and work for you to get every deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing that an expert is handling it all for you. And for a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in if a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year. Just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. Folks, Pint and a Pie at the Space Needle is the perfect pregame spot before all of your Seattle activities. After 4 p.m., the Space Needle's Pint and a Pie gives you the whole package. entry, a savory or sweet tip-top pie, and a pint of beer, wine, or a non-alcoholic drink, all for just $35 per person. Pint and a Pie is your launch pad to game night at Gonzaga's home away from home. The Space Needle is Seattle's most iconic destination, not just for the views, but for evening fun. And rather than trying to cram into a crowded sports bar right before the game, why not enjoy a little space and a great view from your favorite beverage? Create a pregame story as iconic as the Space Needle itself. Look out over the city and look down at Climate Pledge Arena before you go inside. So whether it's date night, friend night, or you're just there for the deal of it all, come take your place on the horizon. Only $35 per person, limited time offer, 21 plus only, ID required. Get your tickets at spaceneedle.com, minimum 2 required. All right, folks, segment 3, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast. And we're closing out the show, talking about the updated AP top 25 rankings, what it means for Gonzaga. And as always, we do this on every Tuesday show. We'll talk about where Gonzaga is currently in the net rankings as well. Gonzaga was the biggest faller, tied, I should say, with BYU as the biggest faller in the AP top 25 from last week to this week. Not exactly a shock. Gonzaga falls from number 6 to number 12 after the 87-80 loss on the road against the Portland Pilots. And then, of course, a 20-point win over the Oregon State Beavers in Corvallis on Saturday. The Zags were number 12 back on November 24th. That was the Monday before, like the hours before Gonzaga took on Alabama in their first game of the Players Era Festival. They beat Alabama, beat Maryland by 39 points, and then, of course, got walloped by Michigan in the Players Era Championship. But still, after that, they moved up one spot to number 11. Then they were top 10 for the next 8 weeks. So this week ends an 8-week streak of Gonzaga being in the top 10 of the AP poll. But again, we're not surprised that happened after Gonzaga's loss to Portland. One of 2 teams to fall 6 spots. Again, BYU was the other one. They fell from number 16 to number 22. They took 2 losses last week, one of them to Oklahoma State, which is a pretty bad loss, at least compared to the Big 12. Their other loss, not exactly a bad one, to Houston, although it was at home for BYU. You'd like to get wins at the Marriott Center. They've struggled to do so, albeit against teams like Arizona and Houston. Top 12 this week in the AP poll. Arizona, speaking of them, they are at number 1. Michigan is at number 2. Houston at number 3. All 3 teams we just talked about there. Duke stayed at number 4 despite losing to North Carolina. Iowa State at 5. UConn falls to number 6. Nebraska up at number 7. Illinois falls to number 8. Kansas at number 9. Michigan State 10. And then North Carolina moving up 3 spots to number 11 after beating Duke in that rivalry game on Saturday. Hard to argue with this. I mean, I think this feels about right. I was talking with my co-host for Locked On College Basketball, Isaac Shade, before the poll came out on Sunday, and he is also the host of Locked On Tar Heels. And I said, yeah, it feels like you guys are going to jump us, and you guys will probably be 11. We'll probably be 12. And I thought maybe Florida would sneak all the way up in there, but Florida, I think, is down at 14 or 15. Either way, this feels about right. I think there's some people who are going to say, oh, Gonzaga shouldn't even be that high. Like it was a really hideous game. Gonzaga's had 23 games that they've won and just 2 really, really ugly losses. They've had some ugly wins too, don't get me wrong, but this still feels like the right spot for them. And again, the computer models tend to agree. KenPom, at least as I'm recording this, also has Gonzaga at number 12 in the country. Bart Torvik is a little lower on Gonzaga, down at 17. I wouldn't quibble too much if the Zags were down that low. Any lower than that, I think I'd be like, well, that's probably not right. But 17 feels like kind of the lower end of where I think it's arguable to have them ranked. Evan Miyakawa has Gonzaga at number 11. So again, they're all kind of right in that range. Gonzaga does now have a win over a ranked team. It's not because Alabama jumped back into the top 25. It is because Kentucky did. Kentucky, number 25 in the AP poll this week. They have won 8 of their last 9 games and are now in, I believe, second place or tied for second place in the SEC, which has been down from where it was last year, but still, for a team that looked really bad earlier in the year, they're one of the best teams in the SEC so far. 8 of their last 9. They swept Tennessee, got a win over Arkansas, have picked up some really nice W's as of late. Again, 25th, the team that is 26th, the top receiving votes team is Alabama. So they're very close to having 2 games over ranked teams. Alabama's still outside the top 25 after some serious struggles this month. 2 other teams Gonzaga has beat this year are getting votes In the AP Top 25, that would be Santa Clara, who got 2 votes, and St. Mary's, who got 1. Not only teams Gonzaga's already beat, but teams they're going to play relatively soon. Santa Clara in particular, this Saturday at 7:30 p.m. at the Levy Center. Big time matchup between those two programs. St. Mary's, of course, the WCC finale on February 28th. We didn't mention the net yet because Gonzaga is higher in the net than anywhere else. They are actually at number 7 in the net, which is a little bit of a shock. And if you remember last year, Gonzaga was kind of higher in the net than it felt like their actual resume was. And this is, again, if you're ever wondering, why is Graham Ike still on the floor? This is what Mark Few is. This is why. In a lot of ways, they're trying to maximize the margin of victory in order to boost their net rankings. And I would say hate the player, or don't hate the player, hate the game. This is the system that they are forced to play within. And because Gonzaga does not have as many quad 1 opportunities, blasting bad teams is the best way they can show up highly in the net. And KenPom, that's why they do what they do. It's not ideal, certainly, but it is part of the reality. That is why they are at 7th. After the UP game, they fell from 4th to 9th. Then after the Oregon State game, they moved up from 9th to 8th, and then they moved up to 7th just because of other results around the college basketball space. Also, shout out St. Mary's because they are now 29th in the net, which means that Gonzaga's win over them from a few weeks ago is now a quad 1 win. So it's nice to have that help from some of the opponents at this point. Gonzaga 4-1 in quad 1 games. Alabama, Kentucky, UCLA, now St. Mary's are your 4 quad 1 wins. Michigan, of course, your quad 1 loss. 5-0 in quad 2. Arizona State, which was always hanging right between quad 1 and quad 2. Santa Clara is a quad 2 win. So is Washington State on the road. Seattle and Oklahoma. Worth pointing out, Wazoo and Seattle hanging by a thread, quite literally. You have to be, those were road games for Gonzaga, so you have to be a top 135 team in the net to be a quad 2 win. Washington State is 133rd. Seattle U is 134th. Again, we will probably see a situation where Gonzaga will beat. If Gonzaga beats Washington State on Tuesday night, that will be a quad 3 win for Gonzaga because it is at home. And their other game against Wazoo will probably drop to being a quad 3 game, the perils of this circumstance and just how it works. Or Oklahoma climbed from quad 3 to quad 2, so nice to have them back in that quad 2 conversation as well. Quad 3, the Zags are 8-1. Of course, the loss to Portland now sits at quad 3. I got a mailbag question that I'll answer here very quickly. It was from Jeff via Gmail, who said, if Portland wins out, could they possibly be a quad 2 win? No, it's not going to happen. They're not even close. We're going to be happy if Portland doesn't end up a quad 4 loss for Gonzaga. And I don't think that it will. But they're a heck of a lot closer to being a quad 4 loss for Gonzaga than a quad 2 loss. They're like 70 spots away. It's not going to happen. Creighton, Maryland, Oregon, San Diego, Seattle, LMU, San Francisco, Oregon State being the other quad 3 wins for Gonzaga. And then the Zags 6-0 in quad 4 games. 6 games remaining in conference play. 2 of them are quad 1. That is, of course, the at Santa Clara game this Saturday, and then the finale against St. Mary's. Both of them will stay quad 1. There's no real mystery there. So that's great for Gonzaga to have those on the docket. 1 quad 2 game, that is the road game against San Francisco at the Chase Center. 2 quad 3 games, including tonight's battle against Washington State, as well as the home game against Pacific. And then Gonzaga's game at home against Portland, which is quad 4. And again, Gonzaga will likely get a quad 2 and a quad 1 game in the WCC tournament, assuming they get a top 2 seed and are able to advance to the conference championship. All right, folks, that's going to wrap it up for me today here on the Locked On Zags podcast. Thank you so much to those of you who have made the show your first listen or your first watch of the day, and a special shout out to those everyday listeners as well. Be back with you all after Gonzaga's game against Washington State late Tuesday night. We'll have a show for you all then, so check it out there. And then, of course, we'll get you ready for that big-time battle against Santa Clara later in the week. Thanks again, folks. Have a fantastic rest of your day. And, of course, as always, go Zags.